Once we have seen the theory about the MVVM pattern, let's see how to implement it in a .NET Maui based project. To do this, let's create a new project, let's select the .NET Maui app template, and let's name it, for example, MVVM demo. Let's create the project. And once the project has been created, one of the common things that is usually done is to create different folders where each of the components of the MVVM pattern are going to be placed. So, as part of the project, I'm going to create a new folder to be named, for example, MVVM, to create the 3 subfolders. I will then proceed to create the set of folders that I mentioned you in the slides. Let's first create a folder called Models. Let's then create the Views folder. And finally, let's create the folder called View Models. To perform this test, we're going to start by defining a model that is part of the application. For this, we're going to create a new class. We're going to call it, for example, Person. We're going to make it a public class and only define a couple of properties as part of the class to keep things simple. The second property is going to be of type int, and it's going to be called age. Now, with the knowledge we currently have, what we would do to bind a person's data to the graphical interface would be to create as part of the views a new page. Let's select the content page template and let's call it, for example, person view. Once we have created this page, let's go to the code behind of the page. That is, let's go to the personview.cs file and let's create a new instance of a person. We have to import the namespace that is needed. Notice that we have several namespaces that we could use. We are interested in the one that is part of the project. Let's initialize some properties such as name equals Hector. Let's assign to the age property a value equal to 100. And with this, we finish creating an instance of a person. Finally, as you may remember from previous lessons, we have to bind to the binding context, which is going to be the source of information, and in our case, we're going to bind the page directly to the complete object. The next step is to return to the SAML code, and we're going to bind the text property to this instance that we have previously created through binding, and we indicate that we want to bind to the name property. Finally, to test the application, we're going to go to the app.saml.cs file and we're going to indicate that we want this page to be the initial page. We have to import the namespace that is needed and we're going to test the application. Once the application has been initialized, we can already see the name being displayed and the information is being taken from the model that we created previously. I'm going to modify some properties to make this look better. Like, for example, the vertical options and horizontal options of the label control, I'm going to assign them to the stack layout. And I'm going to increase the font size of the label control to a value of 50. With this, we can already see in a better way the name. Previously, I had commented in the slides that the MVVM pattern indicates that a view should not communicate directly with the models, as we are doing at the moment, but through the component called viewModel. So, as not to mix the logic with the graphical interface part, how can we do this? Well, I will stop the execution of the application, and as part of the folder called viewModels, I will create a new class. ViewModel is an intermediate class that is going to allow you to connect a graphical interface with the data, and normally the name of a viewModel starts the same as one of the views. In this case, our view is called PersonView. Then, the common thing to work with the view model is to add to the end of the name of the view the word model. Therefore, the name of this class will be PersonViewModel. With this, we have the view model ready. Something that normally happens in .NET Maui applications is that only one view model is handled for each of the views, since a view model contains a series of properties that the graphical interface needs to fill the information of each one of its controls. And as an additional point, although this name that I am showing you is not mandatory to create a view model, it is a nomenclature that is used when working with .NET Maui projects. Let's create this class then. We're going to convert it into a public class. And we're going to do something similar to what we were doing in code behind. you can see that in this case, from the constructor, the instance of the person is created. So I'm going to cut this entire instance out of the code behind file. I'm going to go back to the view model and I'm going to create a constructor for this class. In the constructor, I'm going to paste the instance definition. Let's import the namespace that is needed. Remember that it has to be the namespace of your project. Once we have done this, there is something important to remember. The way in which the view model and the graphical interface are going to communicate is going to be through public properties, so we must convert this variable into a public property. I'm going to create a property of type person, which is the type that we want to bind. We're going to call it, for example, person, and we're going to assign a get and a set to it. Once the property is created, we're going to remove this var, and instead we're going to use directly the property at the class level called person. At this moment, Visual Studio marks us a problem. The error indicates that the name of the person does not exist in the current context. And this is logical since we cut the reference of the person before to take it to the view model. To solve this problem, let's assign to the binding context a new instance of the view model called personViewModel. We have to import the namespace that is needed, and in this way, when the page is created, a new instance of the view model will be created. This view model is going to create the new reference of the person, and therefore we're going to have it available to assign it to the binding context. It seems that everything is ready. Let's test the application to see if everything works correctly. However, when we start the application, we see that no graphical element appears. At this point, I want you to think about why the application is not working as it should. The problem we have is that if we go back to the graphical interface file, look what we're doing. We're trying to bind to the text property a property called name. If you remember, the information source that we assigned as part of the binding context is a new instance of personViewModel. It is from this instance that we're going to try to bind to a property called name. However, if we check the view model, you can see that we don't have any property called name. Who really has the property named name? Well, the reference that does have a property named name is the reference person, which does exist in the view model. Therefore, we have to return to the XAML file, and we're going to indicate that we want to access the reference of the person that does have a property called name. Notice that at the moment of doing this, the name of the person appears automatically, since we have established a correct binding.